And Cornwell Price, and I've lived in Marlin off and on for my whole life, and that's been since 1947. I went off to college at the University of Illinois, and I lived in Houston for 9 years, and other than that, I've lived here. The Marlin has a history of having, I was the band director here for 21 years, and Marlin has a history of having good high school band programs. For over a century now, since about 1907, Marlin's had a lot of prominent people live here. They've been produced a couple of federal district judges, a United States senator, a lot of people who have done well and gone away.
So when Tom So when Tom Connally was elected, that would have been something that they would have celebrated here?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
He was first he was an attorney, and then was read out of the Baptist Church for dancing, by the way. He was my great uncle, so I do know something about Tom Connally. Anyway, Uncle Tom, as we call him. Anyway, he was elected to the United States House of Representatives in whatever year they vote. His first vote was at 1918, 17 or 18, was to whether to go to war in World War I in the House. And then he served in the House. He was also in the state legislature before that, served in the House from that year, 1718, until 1928, and then he was a United States Senator from 1928 to 1952-3. Was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee during World War II, was one of the persons who devised Lend-Lease, and was on the United Nations Charter Committee. He was in London with Eleanor Roosevelt. He had a falling out from the family lore with FDR over some of his New Deal policies, and then he also did the Hot Oil Act and the Oil Depletion, but a lot of that's gone away. And since I think Ted Kennedy did away with that, as I remember. The oil depletion allowance, I believe, is correct.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so, his being a United States Senator, he got our VA here, which is no longer. Principi, who was with George Bush, took care of that. Anyway, they said it was going to close almost the day it was open. And then I think partly in an effort to keep it here, as well as to honor Senator Connally for having gotten it here. They named it for him, and it was that for a while until it was closed down as a VA. But most of the things that have happened to Marlin of late have not been real good. I mean, the VA closed. Back in the 80s, the economic downturn took away a lot of the manufacturing business. Of course, they've probably been gone anyway now since everything's overseas. Well, I used to go when I was in high school. I went out with a guy whose grandparents were John and Aga Tomlinson's good friends, and we used to go cut cattle out there. And I really, growing up, didn't know John very well. And my parents didn't attend the Old Settlers Reunion or anything like that. And so, but I knew John. I knew him around town, but I didn't know him. And he was just as nice a guy as you'd ever run across. Real strong, real big fella, and enjoyed going out there. And one of my fondest memories is going out with them. They were going to go round up some cattle, and I rode horses, but not like this. And it was a cutting horse, and the cutting horse went that way, and I went that way. Boom! It was really funny, but we got to do that. I didn't do that very often, just a couple of times. And he was just a nice guy, real intelligent, real bright, real good. Just an enjoyable person. And he knew my mother real well because my mother grew up here, of course. My grandfather was a doctor, had to do with the mineral baths. My dad, too, and my uncle, and they had one of the bathhouses and clinics here. And
well, I want to ask you about that, but
sure.
what did John look like?
John, big guy. And when I knew him, I mean, he's real tall to me. And of course, I'm tall. So I guess he was well over 6 feet tall. And most of the time I remember him in ticking overalls and white-headed. And he was a big fella, just real big fella. And blue eyes, as I recall.
Okay.
I think that's correct. And Olga was her name. And the fellow I went out with always called her Olga because he was a little boy and couldn't say Olga. And anyway, she was a big woman. They never had children that I remember. I don't know of any that had not survived or anything like that. But and he just, nice, good cattleman.
I also heard he had dogs. That he had
a whole lot
hunting
of dogs.
hounds.
Yes, he did. But I didn't know the dogs very well. They were around with us, but I didn't really know them.
Oh, okay.
Harley knew real well. As a matter of fact, she was mother to Jane and Pauline and Mabel Lee. Jane married John Justin. Exactly.
Well, one of the things in understanding all this was what was the most important thing to know about these people was the maiden names.
Oh, yes.
Because it all had to do with the connections were all through the wives, not so much.
In your family?
Yeah, well, between the Joneses and Stallworths.
Oh, I see. Right.
And
really?
Tomlinsons.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And some of the Stallworths I'm kin to too. My great grandfather, I counted up for you, but it's not important, had a lot of children. He moved here. At first he came to Texas in 1830, down to a little town called Egypt. And it's north and west of Horton a little bit. After, let me see, his children he had said several children, 9, 10, 11, something like that. And I keep it I know where it is. I do a little bit of Ancestry.com for the heck of it, and Family Tree Maker. I get bored on winter night and I get on the line, that sort of thing. And over the years, I've tracked some of this down. Anyway, and of course, I've known this family lore for my whole life. And all these children needed to be educated. They thought that he valued an education. I assume he must have had some somewhere throughout his family. They moved from Alabama to Texas, and then moved from Texas down at Horton, Egypt, up to Round Top. Round Top at the time was where there was the only school in Texas, or one of the few. And then after the Civil War, they moved from Round Top to Marlin, and he had a hotel here. Supposedly, Sam Houston stayed in the hotel once. And what's his name again? His name was Thomas Jones Reed.
Thomas Jones Reed.
Right.
And the name of the hotel?
Was the Reed Hotel.
Okay.
And it was where the post office is now. And subsequent to that, it was the Arlington Hotel, and after it was Reed Hotel, and then the Arlington Hotel went through at least 2 different versions. One burned and one was then in stone. When the Moody's bought the Hilton Hotel from Conrad Hilton, they tore the Arlington Hotel down, and it used to be the bricks in the high school gym. They moved it over to there. Okay, so the Arlington Hotel that's where the New York Giants baseball team stayed when they would come and do their spring training for about 23-4 years here with Tug McGraw. That's who their manager was. And my great aunt and my grandmother and one of the other great aunts that were going to have an exposition. No, that's not what you call it. Yeah, it is.
It is called an exposition.
Yeah, right. Some days, I've been grading papers all afternoon. My brain's fried. Anyway, they were going to have a baseball baseball game for them. And they sent her to get the baseballs. I have no idea why. And she got them at the 5 and dime. And, of course, they took one swing and they all fell apart. That was one of the tales. But they did for some kind of benefit for some group in Marlin. It was kind of funny. Anyway, but my family, everybody went out of state, or I went to college. My grandmother had a degree in college. Senator Connally's wife was my grandmother's sister, and she studied at the Cincinnati Conservatory. And my grandmother went to Peabody, which is part of Vanderbilt. It wasn't then, but it is now. And my grandfather went to Vanderbilt Medical School and pulled himself up by the bootstraps and went there. And my dad went to
what's
Columbia.
Your grandfather's name?
Dr. Bowie.
Dr. Bowie. So
yes.
Okay.
Neil Dougal Bowie.
Okay.
He was one of the ones who had the
right. Yeah. No.
had the bathhouse, right? And my uncle and my dad, and they had a clinic here, and people came from all over to come to the baths and stay in the hotel. I have a Christmas card from Jesse Jones. You surely know who that is. Mm-hmm. To my grandfather, saying that he enjoyed meeting young Mr. Hilton, and he thought he might make a name for himself someday in the hotel business. It's delightful.